I took a business that when I joined it made nothing and was in Barclays Bank recovery, and when I left it was in the FTSE 100 shading £1 billion profit. First of all, you've got to have the respect of the team that you work with, your colleagues throughout the business, that they respect you as a leader. And in positioning terms, that means what I would call sitting at the centre of the wheel, so that each of your departments and leaders report into you for the ultimate decision and the ultimate delivery of the strategy. I think clear communication is important, setting the goals so the whole organisation is aware of the critical goals that you're attempting to achieve. And I think both that is important in terms of both short term and long term. The other factor is that whilst the business needs to be structured, there's also got to be agility and flexibility to deliver and to move as other variables move in your market. So it might be your marketplace, it might be recent events such as COVID, etc. You've got to have agility, and I think a number of companies have fallen short because they've been really stereotyped and very down one channel, whereas I think flexibility is important. Really, you lead from the front, and I was very keen on metric analytics, so decisions had to have a purpose, but in the whole organisation, it was a combination. It was very driven, very energetic, very competitive, and ultimately they combined to create ultimate ambition. And within that framework, accountability was critical. So each individual leader had clear accountability and delivered upon it. I think all retailers would recognise the changes in the last 5 years, maybe less, which have been more influential than at any time before. So it definitely started with e-com, online trading. There was a big movement towards that. There was a big sort of hype around it. So that one had to recognise that was an increasing consumer channel. So that sort of fed into both communication to the consumer and logistics to enable you to serve the consumer. The next changes were the combination really of COVID, which came along and really shook the retail world, because there was differential treatment between different retailers. There was having to close, there was pressure on the warehouse, there was a shift to online. One didn't know how sticky that shift to online was going to be. So again, Combine that and then the Ukraine situation, high levels of inflation, really sort of challenging times for a conventional bricks and mortar retailer to really demonstrate the agility and flexibility to which I referred to previously. And therefore the future, whilst not entirely predictable, I would say the return to bricks and mortar retail has been far greater than any of us that are in the multi-channel arena would have imagined, because the shift during COVID was clearly towards online, and the level of stickiness was uncertain. So would that tilt be permanent, and therefore would the economics of bricks and mortar retail become very fragile because of the costs of property, etc. And it became a which way are we going to move? The surprising part has been the move back to bricks and mortar, which for many businesses has created some balance between the two. And therefore, I think if you are a good retailer in either channel or in both channels, you will succeed. But it clearly has become an increasingly competitive situation because of external dynamics that have impacted on it. Well, I'd like to think, as I say, I've historically understated PR and let my track record speak for itself. So, just to put it in context, under my stewardship, we won Share of the Decade from 2010 to 2020. We won Share of the Century between 2000 and 2020. We have been one of the only successful companies to have developed from a Northwest base to a literally success overseas. So whilst many British companies and big names have retracted out of overseas, we created a development because I realised that in the market we were in, I had to be global. So I made acquisitions in America, in Australia, developed in Australia, Indonesia, Israel, all Europe, Eastern Europe. So the international development of the business was critical. So whereas many people, I don't think anybody, and I'm going to sing a tune for a minute, has a track record equal to mine, and probably one of three, maybe, if not the most successful retailer in the UK in the last 25 years, basically because I took a business that when I joined it made nothing and was in Barclays Bank recovery, and when I left it was in the FTSE 100 and shading £1 billion profit. So the whole journey is probably the most interesting in terms of international development, in terms of profitability, in terms of success from a small nucleus, is probably the most interesting and most successful development in the UK. So, I think I've played that pretty low profile up to now, but that's the truth of it, and the evidence supports it.
Yeah, fantastic answer.
So
really.
what they will take away is the ingredients and the inspiration that takes you along that journey, and that they'll recognise the various parts of the journey, including the international challenges, the ambitions. You know, when you're a company at the beginning and you're in, as I say, with the bank about to pull the rug when I started, the challenges that take you through to being one of the most successful retailers in the UK. You know, at one point, the only UK retailer with a market cap higher than JD when I was there was Tesco. So we were higher than Next, we were higher than Sainsbury's, we were higher than everybody else you want to mention. You know, that's the sort of underlying story from route to along the escalation to the success that presently prevails. So that, you know, they're able to interact. And the other thing I always hope is they can identify that I'm not the normal corporate being, that I'm actually a normal guy who's driven and competitive and achieved huge success as a result. So I think they can interrelate. I think the audience can interact. You know, any speeches I've done, the reaction has always been very, very positive. I think for being a high achiever, but very fair, and to recognise in being a high achiever what that entails, what challenges that entails, what sacrifices that entails, but really remembered for what has been achieved, as saying he took a company that was on the edge of bankruptcy to the FTSE 100 and to being the major international sportswear player in the world.